All right. Hello, everyone. We are talking today all about the triangle sum theorem. But before we get into that, if you could pause your video, I would love it if you would try the review problem at the top of the page. Pause your video now and give it a shot. All right. You could have said either one of these four angles. It says identify an angle that is supplementary to the angle marked in the diagram. So what we're looking for is anything that is going to be a linear pair, which that's where angles 2 and angles 4 come from, or anything that is consecutive interior. So that's why angle 6 technically would be an option. Now, if you said angle 8, this one probably was the hardest one to get. Angle 8 technically would have been correct because it's congruent to angle 6. So since those two have the same measure, then any of those angles are still going to be supplementary with 125. And the measure of that angle you should have got to be 55 degrees. All right. Now, but before we get into triangle sum theorem today, if you guys could turn to page 2, we are going to do a couple of the vocab words for a second today. So on our vocab terms, if you guys could pause your video and fill out these two definitions, please do so now. Now, for triangles, what is a triangle? It is simply just a three-sided shape. Hopefully this is something that you knew before today. And triangles can look a whole lot of different ways. Now, I'm awful at drawing them, just forewarning for today. You could have it in one that looks like this. There's ones that open up a little bit wider. There's ones that are supposed to look at least kind of like an L-shaped one. But simply enough, a triangle is just a three-sided shape. Now, when we talk about the next definition, the interior angles of the triangle, the interior angles, now I'm going to kind of copy one of the ones that I used up here. Oopsies, not cut it. If we're going to use this triangle here, when we talk about the interior angles are the ones that are going to be inside of the shape right here. So since a triangle has 3 sides, it coincidentally also has 3 angles. Okay. So if we flip back to our day of notes, let's actually we're going to look a little more closely at triangles because they have some pretty cool properties. And one of the first ones that we're going to learn about triangles, since it's our first shape, is something called the triangle sum theorem. And what the triangle sum theorem shows us is this: it says the sum of the measures of the interior angles of the triangle is 180 degrees. So we have yet another thing that is supplementary. If I take all of the measures of the angles, whatever measure of angle A is, if I take that and I add that to whatever the measure of angle B is, and I add that to whatever the measure of angle C is, at the end of the day, it's always going to total up to be 180 degrees. So we can use this in a lot of different scenarios. If you look down at example 1, it says find the measure of angle C. So simply because of the fact that I know angles A and B here, because I know all angles in a triangle add up to 180, I can use that information to find angle C. If I take 25 plus 39 plus whatever angle C is, it should add up to be 180 degrees. Now, if you went through and you just subtracted those two angles off of 180, you would be totally correct. I'm going to go about and just kind of finish my equation here. If you add those two together, those end up being 64 degrees. So if I subtract 64 from 180, we can now figure out what angle C is. Oop, and I wrote angle G on accident. I can't write today, guys. But if I take 180 minus 64, that's going to give us our final answer of 116 degrees. All right. That even applies to triangles like in example 2. We still, even though we have variables involved, I still know that if I take angles G, H, and T, angle G plus angle H plus angle T, all of those measures should add up to be 180. So let's plug in those values. Angle G is going to be 80 degrees. Angle H is going to be 4x degrees. Angle T is going to be 6x degrees. And that totals up to be 180. So let's solve. Let's combine our like terms first. 4x plus 6x is going to be 10x. My next step here, it looks like we're going to have to subtract 80 from both sides. So I'm going to subtract 80 over to the other side. We're going to be left with 10x is equal to 100. And then my last step, dividing by 10 on both sides, we're going to get our answer for x equals 10. Now we do want to pause for a second on this one though, because it does say solve for x. So that is one of my answers, but it also says find the measures of each of those angles. We want to actually find the measure of angle G, angle H, and angle T. And I can do that now because I actually know what x is. Now angle G is no mystery. I already know that angle G is going to be 80 degrees. But to figure out the other two, we want to take our value for x and actually plug it in. For angle H, if I take 4 times 10, we're going to get a measure of 40 degrees. For angle T, if I take 6 times 10, that's going to give me 60 degrees. Now we can check our answer. If I take 40 plus 80 plus 60, we are in luck because that definitely totals up to 180 degrees. So that's kind of it for today. Now what I need you guys to do, if you guys turn to the next page, I would love it if you guys would try the You Try Now problems here. So pause your video now and please give these two a shot. All right, answers are up. Answer for number 1 here again, all interior angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So if I take 90 degrees plus the measure of angle M plus the measure of angle Z, all of that should add up to 180, and that becomes our equation. So if you solve, you should have got x to be 5. And then the last one on here, now this one was a little bit tricky. This one, you were probably noticing I said we were trying to find x. So if you set up all your angles, technically what we have inside here, we do have a triangle, which means all of those interior angles add up to 180 degrees. So we know that if you would have solved here, you would have gotten this angle here to be 56 degrees. Now, if we're solving for x, I don't know that this is a 90, which means because that symbol isn't there, right? So I can't go based on looks there, but what we do have is alternate interior. What we have is parallel lines. That is what these symbols mean, which means that alternate interior are congruent, corresponding are congruent. All of those 4 relationships, alternate exterior are going to be congruent, and vertical angles would be congruent. So even though we're still working with triangles, sometimes parallel lines can still help us figure things out. Because x is going to be alternate interior with 56, that means x has to be 56 degrees as well. All right. So you guys can now move on and you guys can start the homework for the day.